They tell us decline is a long, slow story, a gentle arc, a few bad years, then reform, then renewal. That is comforting. It lets people sleep at night, but it is almost never true. History doesn't end empires gradually. It stretches them thin for decades, then snaps them suddenly. The collapse feels instant not because it was fast, but because everyone ignored the warning signs until the very last moment. Tonight, we're going to talk about that moment. Not the fall of Britain, not Rome, not Spain, but the pattern that connects them all, and why the United States is moving deeper into the most dangerous phase of that pattern right now. To understand what comes next, you have to understand a simple rule of power. The world's reserve currency is not chosen by trust. It is chosen by necessity, and it is abandoned the moment it becomes a risk instead of a convenience. In the early 1600s, Spain was the richest empire on earth. Silver poured in from the Americas by the ton. The Spanish crown spent lavishly on armies, palaces, and wars across Europe. For a while it worked. Everyone accepted Spanish silver. It was global money. But Spain made the same mistake every empire makes. They assumed demand would last forever. They borrowed against future silver that hadn't yet been mined. They debased their coinage. They fought wars that produced no economic return. Between 1557 and 1666, Spain defaulted on its debt 6 times. 6. Each time, officials promised stability. Each time, creditors were told the situation was temporary. And each time, the currency lost a little more credibility. Spain didn't collapse overnight, but its dominance did. The silver kept coming. The power did not. Fast forward 3 centuries. After World War II, the United States stood alone. Europe was destroyed. Japan was flattened. America had the factories, the oil, the gold, and the military. In 1944, at Bretton Woods, the dollar became the center of the global system. Other currencies were pegged to it. The dollar was pegged to gold. For a brief moment in history, the system actually worked. But systems only work as long as the discipline that created them remains intact. By the 1960s, the United States was running large deficits to fund war in Vietnam and expansive social programs at home. Dollars flooded the world. Foreign governments began to realize something uncomfortable. There were far more dollars in circulation than gold in Fort Knox. In 1971, France started demanding gold instead of paper. Others prepared to follow. And then on a Sunday night, President Richard Nixon went on television and ended the system with a sentence that sounded temporary and harmless. The gold window was closed. The dollar was no longer backed by anything but confidence. That was the first quiet default. From that moment forward, the United States entered a new phase of empire, one where discipline was optional and debt became policy. The world kept using dollars not because they were perfect, but because there was no alternative. Oil was priced in dollars, trade cleared in dollars, debt was denominated in dollars. The privilege was enormous. It allowed the United States to consume more than it produced year after year. It allowed politicians to promise benefits without raising taxes. It allowed crises to be solved with liquidity instead of sacrifice. But here's the part nobody likes to say out loud. Every privilege creates dependency, and every dependency creates fragility. Over the last 25 years, the United States has turned debt into its primary economic tool. After 2008, money creation became routine. After 2020, it became explosive. Trillions were created not to build new productive capacity, but to stabilize markets and fund consumption. The economy appeared strong. Asset prices soared. Stocks rose. Real estate boomed. But strength built on liquidity is not strength. It is sedation. Meanwhile, the structure beneath the system began to weaken. Foreign buyers reduced their share of U.S. treasuries. Central banks quietly increased gold reserves. Trade agreements were signed that bypassed the dollar entirely. None of this made headlines. It never does. The real shifts never do. Empires don't fall when everyone is panicking. They fall when everyone is calm. Then comes the trigger. For Spain, it was repeated defaults. For Britain, it was Suez. For the United States, it will not be symbolic. It will be mechanical, a bond market event. The U.S. government must refinance massive amounts of debt constantly. This only works if buyers show up at reasonable interest rates. As long as demand is strong, the illusion of control remains intact. But demand is not guaranteed, it is rented. When buyers hesitate, yields rise. When yields rise, interest costs explode. When interest costs explode, deficits widen even faster. And at that point, the central bank has only one real option. Intervene. Buy the debt. Create the money. That is not theory, that is arithmetic. And once that line is crossed, the currency doesn't collapse immediately. It degrades. Purchasing power erodes. Inflation becomes structural instead of cyclical. Savings lose value silently. Wages fall behind permanently. This is how reserve currencies actually die. Not in a week, not in a crash, but in a slow-motion loss of trust that suddenly becomes obvious to everyone at once. People often ask what replaces the dollar. That is the wrong question. History shows that transitions are messy. There is usually a period where nothing fully works. Gold rises not because it is perfect, but because it has no counterparty risk. Regional trade blocs expand. Multiple settlement systems coexist. Power fragments. Life goes on, but the rules change. When Britain lost the pound's dominance, it didn't stop being a country, but it stopped being subsidized by the world. Living standards adjusted, choices narrowed, reality returned. That is what losing reserve status actually means, not collapse. Normalization. And normalization is painful when you've lived above your means for generations. The most dangerous belief today is not pessimism, it is permanence. The idea that the system we grew up in is the natural state of the world. It isn't. It is a historical exception. Empires rise when they produce more than they consume. They decline when finance replaces productivity. And they fall when confidence finally meets mathematics. That moment never announces itself in advance. It just arrives. I'm the wealth historian. If you want to understand where we're going, study where others ended.